They say the Dunwell plantation fell in a single dawn, and nobody ever agreed on how. Some swear it started the moment Eden and Ina, the albino twin sisters, were dragged in during a storm. Two pale, silent girls who held on to each other like the world was trying to tear them apart. At first, folks felt sorry for them, until the strange things began. Horses refused to go near them. Tools moved in the night. Overseers woke screaming about pale ghosts at their bedsides. And at sunrise, barns burned, men fought each other, and the master fled in terror. All while the twins stood there, calm as still water. But here's the part nobody can explain. Eden and Ina said they didn't remember any of it. Not the fires, not the panic, not the way the entire plantation crumbled around them. And when the truth of where they came from finally surfaced, it raised one terrifying question the South never forgot. If two broken girls could bring down a plantation without lifting a hand, what else were they capable of? Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The rain hammered the Dunwell plantation like fists against wood. Mara stood beneath the narrow overhang of the cookhouse, watching water pour from the gutters in sheets. Her hands gripped her shawl tight around her shoulders. The fields had turned to mud hours ago. Livestock screamed from the barns. Voices shouted somewhere in the darkness, men trying to move crates before the river swallowed them whole. Lightning split the sky. In that brief white flash, Mara saw them. Lanterns, 3 of them, moving through the storm like fireflies caught in a flood. She stepped forward, squinting. The lights bounced and swayed. Behind them came the shapes of horses, riders bent low against the wind. A wagon rattled through the mud, its wheels struggling to turn. "Traders," someone muttered beside her. Mara turned. Etta, one of the kitchen girls, stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. Her face looked tight with worry. "This time of night?" Mara said. "In this weather?" Etta shook her head. "Nothing good comes in a storm." The wagon lurched to a stop near the main house. The riders dismounted, soaked through, their boots sinking into mud. One of them, a tall man with a scarred jaw, shouted toward the porch, "Master Dunwell! We need shelter, just for the night." The front door opened. Silas Dunwell appeared, holding a lamp above his head. He was a thin man, sharp-faced, always moving like a bird looking for seed. He peered out at the traders with suspicion. "You're lucky I'm generous," Dunwell called back. "Stable your horses. Get inside before you drown." The traders moved quickly. They unloaded bundles from the wagon, dragging them toward the barn. Mara watched them work. Something felt wrong. The way they moved, the way they kept glancing back at the wagon bed. Then she saw what they were guarding. 2 figures sat in the back of the wagon, small, hunched, shackled. Mara's breath caught. The traders pulled them down roughly. The figures stumbled, their bare feet hitting the mud. One of them fell to her knees. The other reached down to help her stand. Lightning flashed again. Mara's heart froze. They were girls, young, maybe 16, maybe younger. Their skin was pale, so pale it looked like bone in the lamplight. Their hair hung in wet, tangled clumps, white as cotton. When one of them lifted her head, Mara saw her eyes. Red, tinted red, like blood mixed with milk. "Lord, have mercy," Etta whispered. The traders shoved the girls forward. They moved slowly, their steps unsteady. Their wrists were bound with iron cuffs. Their dresses were little more than stitched rags, torn and soaked through. One of the girls kept her head down. The other stared straight ahead, her face blank. They didn't speak. They didn't cry out. They just held each other's hands. Dunwell stepped off the porch, his lamp swinging. He walked toward the girls, his boots splashing through puddles. He stopped a few feet away and stared. "What in God's name are these?" he said. The trader with the scarred jaw wiped rain from his face. Found them 2 counties over. Albinos. Never seen a pair of twins like this. Thought you might be interested. Dunwell circled them slowly. His eyes moved over their skin, their hair, their shackled wrists. He tilted his head like he was inspecting livestock. They talk? He asked. Haven't said a word since we took them. They sick? Healthy enough. Just strange. Dunwell stopped in front of the twins. He lifted his lamp higher, letting the light fall across their faces. One of the girls flinched. The other didn't move. I'll take them, Dunwell said suddenly. The trader blinked. Sir? I'll take them both. Name your price. The trader hesitated, then grinned. Thought you might. Let's talk inside. Mara watched as Dunwell led the traders toward the house, leaving the twins standing alone in the rain. The girls didn't move. They just stood there, hands still clasped, water pouring over their pale skin. Etta stepped out from the cookhouse. Mara, don't! But Mara was already walking toward them. She moved slowly, carefully, the way she would approach a frightened animal. The twins turned their heads in unison, watching her. Their red-tinted eyes caught the lamplight. Mara stopped a few feet away. She pulled her shawl tighter and spoke softly. You cold? The twins didn't answer. One of them, the one who had fallen earlier, shivered. The other squeezed her hand tighter. Mara glanced back toward the house. Dunwell's voice carried through the open door, loud and excited. He was already bragging, already imagining how he'd show them off at the next county gathering. Mara turned back to the twins. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You safe now, she said, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. Nobody gonna hurt you tonight. The twin who had been staring straight ahead finally moved. She looked at Mara, really looked at her. Her eyes were calm, empty, like she'd stopped feeling fear a long time ago. Mara's chest tightened. The storm began to quiet. The thunder rolled farther away. The rain softened to a steady drizzle. An overseer appeared from the barn, carrying a lantern. He gestured toward the twins with his free hand. Master says put them in the cabin behind the weaver's shed, he said. Get them out of the rain. Mara nodded. She reached out slowly, offering her hand. The twins looked at it, but didn't take it. They just started walking, still holding each other, their bare feet leaving prints in the mud. Mara followed them across the yard. The cabin was small, windowless, with a dirt floor and a single straw mattress. The overseer unlocked the door and stepped aside. The twins walked inside without hesitation. They moved to the mattress and lay down together, their hands still clasped. Their eyes stayed open, staring at the ceiling. Mara stood in the doorway, watching. Lightning flashed one last time, spilling white light across their faces. For a moment, they looked like ghosts, like something not quite real. Then the light faded, and they were just 2 scared girls lying in the dark. The rooster's crow cut through the morning like a blade. Mara was already awake, had been for an hour, her hands busy kneading dough in the cookhouse. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn, leaving the world thick with fog and mud. Water dripped from the eaves in steady rhythm. Workers emerged from their cabins slowly, stretching sore muscles, moving toward the well. The overseers appeared next, boots squelching through puddles, calling out assignments in harsh voices. Field hands to the east quarter. Barn crew, get those animals fed. Kitchen girls, hurry it up. Mara stepped outside, wiping flour from her hands. The air smelled like wet earth and wood smoke. Across the yard, near the weaver's shed, she could see the cabin where the twins had spent the night. The door remained closed. They still sleeping? Etta asked, appearing beside her. Don't know, Mara said. Haven't seen them come out. Etta frowned. Master gonna want them working soon enough. A shout interrupted them. Near the stables, one of the horse handlers was struggling with a mare. The animal reared back, eyes rolling white, hooves thrashing. The handler yanked the reins, trying to calm her. "Easy now, easy!" But the horse wouldn't settle. She pulled against the rope, nostrils flaring, head tossing side to side. "What's wrong with her?" another worker called out. The handler didn't answer. He was looking at something across the yard. Mara followed his gaze. The twins' cabin. The door had opened. Eden and Ina stood in the doorway, their pale skin almost glowing in the morning fog. The mare screamed. She ripped free from the handler's grip and bolted toward the far fence, crashing against the rails. Two other horses joined her, stamping and snorting, pressing themselves as far from the twins' cabin as the paddock would allow. The handler stared, his face slack with confusion. "What in the—" "Get those animals under control," an overseer barked. The twins stepped outside fully now. They moved in perfect unison, one step at a time, their hands clasped together. Their white hair hung loose around their shoulders. Their red-tinted eyes scanned the yard without expression. Workers stopped what they were doing. Everyone watched. Nobody spoke. Mara felt her pulse quicken. Something about the way the twins moved, so precise, so synchronized, made her skin prickle. "Back to work!" the overseer shouted. "All of you!" The spell broke. People lowered their heads and returned to their tasks. But Mara noticed the sidelong glances, the whispers behind cupped hands. By mid-morning, Caleb Ward was in a rage. He tore through the tool shed, throwing buckets and shovels aside. "Where is it? Where the hell is it?" Workers nearby exchanged nervous looks, but said nothing. "My whip!" Caleb roared. "Someone took my damn whip!" He stormed out of the shed, scanning the yard with wild eyes. His face was red, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "Who took it?" he demanded. "Who?" Nobody answered. Nobody met his eyes. Caleb grabbed the nearest worker, a young man named Samuel, by the shirt. "Was it you? You think you're clever?" "No, sir," Samuel stammered. "I ain't touched nothing." Caleb shoved him away and stalked toward the main house, muttering curses under his breath. Mara watched him go. She'd seen Caleb angry before, but this was different. This was panic barely held in check. "He's scared," Etta whispered beside her. "Of what?" Mara asked. Etta nodded toward the twins, who now sat together beneath a tree, their heads bowed close like they were sharing secrets. "Of them." Jonas found Mara near the well an hour later. His eyes were bloodshot, his movements jittery. He kept looking over his shoulder. "You hear them last night?" he asked in a low voice. "Hear who?" "The twins. I was passing their cabin after dark. Heard them talking." Mara frowned. "They don't talk." They were whispering. Both of them. Same words, same rhythm. But it wasn't English. Wasn't anything I ever heard before. Mara's chest tightened. "Maybe you were dreaming." Jonas shook his head. "I was wide awake. And I'm telling you, it sounded like praying. Or chanting. Something old." Before Mara could respond, another shout rose from the fields. Workers were gathering near the irrigation ditch, pointing at something in the mud. Mara and Jonas walked over. The crowd parted slightly, revealing a strange sight. Tools, dozens of them. Hoes, rakes, shovels, all arranged in a perfect circle in the middle of the empty field. Each one stood upright, handles planted in the mud like grave markers. "Who did this?" an overseer demanded. Silence. "Answer me." Still nothing. Workers stared at the circle with wide eyes. Nobody wanted to touch it. Nobody wanted to go near it. The overseer kicked one of the hoes over. It fell with a wet thud. "Back to work! All of you!" But nobody moved quickly. They drifted away slowly, glancing back at the circle like it might reassemble itself. Silas Dunwell appeared on the porch of the main house just before noon. He looked annoyed, his coat buttoned crookedly, his hair uncombed. "Caleb!" he shouted. Caleb Ward climbed the porch steps, his jaw tight. "Sir? What's all this commotion about missing tools and spooked horses?" Caleb hesitated. Things have been strange, sir, since last night. Strange how? Items moved, animals acting wild, and the twins— Dunwell waved his hand dismissively. The twins are property, Caleb. They're not witches. They're not demons. They're just two unusual girls who are going to make me the talk of the county. But, sir, enough. Put them in the textile house with Etta. Keep them busy. Keep them out of sight until I'm ready to show them off. Caleb's mouth pressed into a thin line. Yes, sir. Etta's weaving room smelled like dye and cotton. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, illuminating dust motes in the air. 3 other women worked at looms, their hands moving in practiced rhythm. Etta brought the twins inside and gestured toward an empty bench. Sit there. Watch what we do. You'll learn. Eden and Ina sat together, their hands still clasped. They watched the weavers in silence, their red-tinted eyes tracking every movement. Etta returned to her loom. The room settled into its usual quiet hum. Shuttles passing through threads, feet pressing pedals, the soft creak of wood. Then something shifted. Eden and Ina began breathing together. Slowly, deeply, in perfect sync. The room grew warmer. One of the weavers paused, wiping her forehead. Another shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Caleb Ward appeared in the doorway, checking on them. His face was already flushed. He stepped inside, his eyes darting around the room. What are they doing? He asked Etta. Just sitting, sir. They bothering you? No, sir. But Caleb's hands were trembling. He clenched them into fists. Something's wrong in here. Nothing's wrong, sir. Caleb stared at the twins. They stared back. Their breathing never changed. Slow, steady, perfectly matched. He backed toward the door. Keep them in your sight. Don't let them wander. He left quickly, almost stumbling over the threshold. The moment he was gone, the tension in the room eased. The weavers relaxed. Etta exhaled slowly, glancing at the twins. They were humming now. Soft, barely audible. A sound that seemed to come from both of them at once. Dusk settled over the plantation like a blanket. Workers trudged back to their quarters, shoulders bent with exhaustion. Smoke rose from cook fires. Children's voices drifted through the air. Caleb Ward stood alone in the yard, his eyes fixed on the twins' cabin. He'd found his whip that afternoon, placed neatly on his bed, the leather coiled in a perfect spiral. Nobody had been in his room. The door had been locked. He muttered under his breath, words too quiet for anyone to hear. His hands opened and closed at his sides. Inside the cabin, a lamp flickered to life. 2 pale figures appeared at the window. Eden and Ina stood side by side, their faces pressed close to the glass. They looked directly at Caleb. Their eyes never blinked. Their expressions never changed. Caleb's breath came faster. He took a step back. Then another. Ain't natural, he whispered. Ain't natural at all. The twins continued watching, motionless, silent. The last light faded from the sky, and darkness swallowed the yard whole. Mara woke to darkness so thick it felt like cloth pressed against her face. Her heart pounded. She didn't know why. She sat up slowly, listening. The cabin was silent except for the breathing of the other women sleeping nearby. Outside, nothing stirred. No birds, no wind, just heavy, waiting quiet. She reached for the candle beside her mat and lit it with shaking hands. The flames sputtered, casting shadows that crawled across the walls. She rose and wrapped a thin shawl around her shoulders. Something was wrong. She felt it in her bones. The fog outside was so dense she could barely see 5 feet ahead. It clung to everything. The ground, the trees, the corners of buildings. Mara walked carefully toward the herb shed, her bare feet cold against the wet grass. She pushed open the door and stepped inside. The smell of dried plants filled her nose. Chamomile, sage, mint. She lit the lamp on the shelf and began gathering what she needed. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind churned. The twins. They'd been here 3 days now. 3 days of strange incidents. Missing items. Animals acting wild. Overseers losing their composure over nothing. And those eyes. Those pale, unblinking eyes that seemed to see straight through a person. Mara's fingers fumbled with a bundle of feverfew. She steadied herself, took a breath. She was being foolish. The twins were just children. Frightened children who'd been through something terrible. A scream shattered the silence. Mara dropped the herbs. The scream came again. Raw, panicked, filled with genuine terror. It was coming from the overseer's quarters. She grabbed the lamp and ran outside. Other workers were emerging from their cabins, confusion on their faces. Someone shouted. Doors slammed. More voices joined the chaos. Mara reached the yard just as Caleb Ward stumbled out of his room, half-dressed, his face twisted with fear. "They tried to kill me!" he shrieked. "They were in my room!" 2 other overseers rushed toward him. "Who? Who was in your room?" "The ghosts. The pale ghosts." Caleb's eyes were wild. He clutched at his throat, gasping. "They were choking me. I felt their hands." "Caleb, calm down." "I felt them." He whirled around, pointing toward the twins' cabin. They were standing over me. Both of them, their hands on my neck. "That's impossible. Your door was locked." "I'm telling you what I saw." More workers gathered now, forming a loose circle around the scene. Mara pushed forward, trying to see. Caleb was shaking violently, his skin gray in the pre-dawn light. "Check his room," one overseer said. They went inside. Moments later they returned, shaking their heads. "Nobody there, nothing disturbed." "They were there," Caleb insisted. "I felt their breath on my face, cold as ice." Before anyone could respond, a different shout rose from across the compound. "Fire! Fire!" Everyone turned. Orange light flickered in the distance. The barn. Silas's prized barn, the one that housed his best horses and stored his most valuable equipment. Flames were climbing the walls, bright against the fog. "Get water! Now!" an overseer yelled. Workers ran for buckets. Mara stood frozen, watching the fire spread impossibly fast. Too fast. No fire moved like that unless it had been fed deliberately. But who would dare? She looked around. The twins' cabin was dark. No movement. No light. The bucket brigade formed quickly, people running back and forth from the well. But the flames were already too high, too hot. The barn roof collapsed inward with a thunderous crash, sending sparks into the sky. "Everyone back!" an overseer shouted. "Let it burn!" Workers stepped away, breathing hard, faces streaked with ash. The fire roared louder, consuming everything. "Who did this?" one overseer demanded. "Who lit this fire?" Nobody answered. Nobody knew. Mara glanced toward the twins' cabin again. This time she saw them. 2 pale figures standing at the window, watching. Their faces showed nothing. No fear, no surprise. Just blank, patient observation. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky gray and pink. The barn was nothing but smoking ruins. Exhausted workers sat in the mud, too tired to move. Overseers paced back and forth, arguing. "Someone had to light it. Nobody saw anything. That's not possible." Their voices grew louder, more frantic. Mara watched them spiral, their fear turning to anger, their anger turning to suspicion. Then it happened. 2 overseers, men who'd worked side by side for years, suddenly turned on each other. "You did this!" one shouted, shoving the other. "What? Are you insane? You've been acting strange all week. You wanted Silas to look bad." "I've been acting strange? You're the one sneaking around at night. I'll break your damn neck." They collided with shocking violence. Fists flew. Bodies crashed to the ground. Other overseers tried to pull them apart. But the fight continued. Savage, senseless, fueled by something more than logic. Workers watched in stunned silence. This wasn't normal. Overseers didn't lose control like this. They were the ones who enforced control. But now they were tearing each other apart in the mud, while the enslaved community watched. Mid-morning brought worse news. Silas Dunwell had been found collapsed on his bedroom floor. The house servants carried him downstairs, pale and trembling. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. "Sir, can you hear me?" his head overseer asked. Silas nodded weakly. "What happened?" Silas's lips formed words. His throat worked, but nothing emerged except a hoarse whisper. "Someone was there." "Who?" "Standing over me." Silas clutched at his throat. "They took my voice." "Sir, you're not making sense." "The pale ones?" Silas's eyes widened with terror. "They were watching me. I felt them, draining me." The overseer exchanged glances with the servants. "Get him water! Get him whiskey! Get him something!" But Silas was already pushing himself up, stumbling toward the door. He grabbed his coat with shaking hands. "Where are you going, sir?" "Away!" The word came out as a rasp. "Away from here!" "But, sir, this place is cursed." Silas shoved past them. "I'm not staying another hour." He left, just walked out his own door, climbed onto a horse, and rode toward the main road. Workers watched from windows and doorways as their master fled his own plantation in broad daylight. Nobody tried to stop him. Nobody knew what to say. The power structure that had held them all in place for years simply dissolved. In less than 12 hours. By noon, the overseers were arguing among themselves, their authority fractured. Some wanted to restore order. Others wanted to leave like Silas had. Fear had replaced discipline. Mara stood with Etta and Jonas near the well, trying to process what had happened. "It was them," Jonas whispered. "The twins. They did this somehow." "They didn't do anything," Etta said. "We would have seen." "Then how do you explain it?" Etta had no answer. None of them did. The sun climbed higher, burning off the fog. The day grew warm despite the destruction. Workers moved slowly through their tasks, uncertain what came next. No one gave orders. No one enforced rules. The plantation existed in a strange suspended state, neither slave nor free, but something in between. As sunset approached, the enslaved community gathered near the smoking remains of the barn. The ruins still smoldered, thin trails of smoke rising into the orange sky. People stood in small groups, speaking in hushed voices. Then the twins appeared. Eden and Ina walked slowly across the yard, moving in perfect synchronization. Their white hair caught the dying light. Their pale skin seemed to glow. Their shadows stretched long and dark behind them. They stopped at the edge of the crowd. Their red-tinted eyes scanned the faces before them. Their expressions revealed nothing. No triumph, no guilt, no emotion at all. Workers parted silently, creating a path. The twins walked through it, their hands clasped together, their breathing perfectly matched. They stood before the barn ruins. Firelight danced across their features, making them look almost translucent. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The entire community stood frozen, waiting for something. An explanation, a confession, a sign. The twins simply stood there, watching, silent, present. The sky held onto the dying light, refusing to let go. Ash drifted through the air like gray snow, settling on shoulders and hair. The barn ruins glowed faintly, heat still radiating from the blackened timbers. Workers stood in a loose circle around the twins. Nobody wanted to get too close. Nobody wanted to be the first to speak. Jonas finally stepped forward. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched at his sides. "Did you do this?" he asked. Eden and Ina stared at him. Their eyes reflected the orange light, making them appear to burn from within. "Did you make this happen?" Jonas pressed. "The fire? Caleb's nightmare? The master running away?" The twins looked at each other. Something passed between them, a silent communication that made everyone watching feel like outsiders. Then Eden turned back to Jonas. Her lips parted. A sound emerged, rough, uncertain, like rusted metal scraping together. "We—" Her voice cracked. She swallowed and tried again. "We don't know." The crowd stirred. People exchanged glances. It was the first time anyone had heard the twins speak. Ina's voice joined her sister's, equally hoarse. "We don't remember." "Remember what?" Jonas demanded. "You don't remember burning down the barn. You don't remember terrorizing Caleb. We don't remember." Eden's face showed confusion. Genuine confusion. "We woke up this morning. People were screaming. We didn't know why." "That's convenient," someone muttered. "It's the truth," Ina said. Her voice trembled slightly. "We don't remember anything, just sleeping, then waking, then fire." Mara stepped closer, studying the twins carefully. She'd delivered hundreds of babies, cared for countless sick and injured. She knew the difference between deception and genuine distress. The twins looked frightened. "Tell me exactly what you remember," Mara said gently. Eden's breathing quickened. "We lay down after dark. We held hands. We closed our eyes. Then we opened them," Ina continued. "And it was morning. And everything was wrong." "You didn't wake during the night? Not once?" "No." Both girls shook their heads in perfect unison. "Did you dream?" The twins fell silent. Their faces went blank again, that unsettling emptiness that made people uncomfortable. "We don't dream," Eden finally said. "Ever?" Mara asked. "We've never dreamed," Ina confirmed. "Just darkness. Then waking." The crowd murmured. Some people looked skeptical. Others looked disturbed. The idea of never dreaming felt wrong somehow, like something essential had been stolen from them. Jonas wasn't satisfied. "You expect us to believe you had nothing to do with what happened? That it's all just coincidence?" "We don't know what we expect," Eden said. Her voice was steadier now, but still rough. "We don't know what's happening." "People think you're cursed," Jonas said bluntly. "Maybe we are." Ina's response was so quiet, it was almost lost in the wind. Mara reached out slowly, giving the twins time to pull away. When they didn't move, she placed her hands on their foreheads. Cool skin, normal temperature. Their pulses were elevated but not dangerously so. She looked into their eyes, checked their pupils, examined their hands for signs of accelerant or ash. Nothing. They were clean. Their nightclothes showed no evidence of leaving their cabin. "They're telling the truth," Mara said. "Or they believe they're telling the truth." "What's the difference?" Jonas asked. "A big one." Mara stepped back. "If they're lying, they're dangerous. If they're confused, they're victims." "Victims of what?" Nobody answered. The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. Etta had been standing quietly at the edge of the circle. Now she moved forward, her expression thoughtful. "There might be answers in the house," she said. "What house?" Jonas asked. "The master's house." Etta gestured toward Silas's mansion. "He fled so fast he left everything behind. His papers, his records. Maybe there's something that explains who these girls are and where they came from." "You want to search his private rooms?" someone asked nervously. "He's gone," Etta said. "And we need answers more than we need caution." Mara hesitated. Entering the master's house uninvited was dangerous, but Etta was right. They needed to understand what was happening. "I'll go," Mara said. "But only a small group. Too many people will draw attention." "I'm coming," Jonas said immediately. "Me too," Etta added. They looked at the twins. Eden and Ina stood motionless, their hands still clasped together. "You should come as well," Mara told them. "If there are answers, you deserve to hear them." The twins nodded silently. The mansion felt enormous in the darkness. Candles cast jumping shadows across expensive furniture and painted portraits. Mara led the way, holding her lantern high. They moved through empty rooms, their footsteps muffled by thick carpets. Everything smelled of tobacco and whiskey and expensive wood polish. Where would he keep important papers? Jonas whispered. His office, Etta said. Second floor, east wing. They climbed the stairs carefully, avoiding the ones that creaked. The office door stood open, revealing a large desk covered with scattered documents. Mara set the lantern on the desk and began searching. Letters, bills, nothing unusual. Jonas checked the drawers. Etta examined the bookshelf. Eden and Ina stood in the doorway, watching. There's nothing here, Jonas said after several minutes. There has to be something, Mara insisted. People don't panic like Silas did without reason. She knelt down, running her hands along the floorboards. Her fingers caught on something, a gap where boards didn't quite meet. Help me, she said. Jonas joined her. Together they pried up 3 boards, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. Inside were journals, 6 of them, bound in dark leather and locked with small brass clasps. Mara pulled them out carefully. The leather was old, cracked at the edges. She forced open the first lock. The pages inside were covered with neat handwriting, dates going back decades, and sketches, detailed medical sketches of children. Children with pale skin and light-colored hair. Dear God, Etta whispered, looking over Mara's shoulder. The diagrams showed measurements, anatomical details, notes about breeding patterns and genetic inheritance, page after page of clinical observations about creating controlled stock, with specific physical traits. What is this? Jonas asked, horrified. Mara turned more pages. The handwriting became someone else's, a doctor's hand, precise and cold. Notes about experimental breeding programs and viable albino subjects and controllable traits. There were lists, names of women, dates of births. Most entries ended with a single word, deceased. But 2 entries at the bottom of one page were different. Female subjects, viable twins, birth year 1846, pale skin, red-tinted eyes, responsive to synchronized stimuli, removed from program for external sale. The twins would be 12 years old. Mara looked up. Eden and Ina had moved closer, drawn by something they couldn't explain. They stared at the journals with an intensity that made Mara's skin prickle. Eden reached out slowly. Her fingers touched the edge of one journal. The moment she made contact, her entire body went rigid. Her eyes widened. Her breathing stopped. Then she spoke, so quietly everyone had to lean in to hear. Home. Her voice trembled on the word. Not the rough, unused rasp from earlier. Something deeper, something ancient and lost. This is home. Ina's hand joined her sister's on the journal. Tears began sliding down both their faces, silent, steady streams that caught the lantern light. We remember, Ina whispered. We remember this place. The others stared in shock. The twins stood frozen, touching the journal like it might disappear, their faces twisted with emotion they couldn't name. Outside, the night pressed against the windows. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. The plantation lay quiet around them, its power structure shattered, its future uncertain. And in Silas Dunwell's hidden compartment, beneath his office floor, 2 12-year-old girls stood trembling over proof that they'd been created deliberately, bred like animals, experimented on, and sold. The journals held their entire history, their beginning, their purpose, their home. Early morning light filtered through the mansion's tall windows, turning the dusty air golden. The group had barely slept. They'd spent the night reading, passing journals between them, their horror growing with each page. Mara sat at the dining table, 3 journals spread before her. Her fingers traced the careful handwriting, stopping on passages that made her stomach turn. Listen to this, she said. Her voice was flat, drained of emotion. March 1844. Subject 14 delivered twins, both albino, both female, separated at birth for comparison study. Twin A raised with verbal stimulation. Twin B raised in silence. Results inconclusive. Both subjects died before age 2. Jonas stood by the window, arms crossed. They were experimenting on babies. Not just experimenting. Etta pointed to another entry. Breeding them deliberately. Look here. They paired specific men and women based on skin tone, hair color, eye sensitivity. They were trying to create children with certain traits. Pale skin, Jonas said bitterly. They wanted pale children they could show off, sell for profit. It wasn't just about appearance. Mara turned more pages. They believed albino children would be more obedient, more controllable. There's a whole section about psychological conditioning and what they called synchronized compliance. Eden and Ina sat together on the floor near the fireplace. They'd barely moved since discovering the journals. Their faces showed no expression, but their hands were clasped so tightly their fingers had gone white. How many children? Ina asked quietly. Mara didn't want to answer, but the girls deserved truth. The records show 47 births over 12 years. How many lived? Silence. How many? Eden repeated. 2, Mara said. You 2. The twins absorbed this without reaction. But something shifted in the room's atmosphere. A thickness in the air. A weight pressing down on everyone present. There's a name that appears in every journal, Etta said. She pointed to the signature at the bottom of medical notes. Dr. Aldrich Harlow. He ran the program. Where is he now? Jonas asked. The journals don't say. Mara flipped through pages. The last entry is from 1850, 8 years ago. It just says, program suspended pending relocation. Relocation where? There. Eden spoke without looking up. She pointed to a page Mara hadn't reached yet. Mara turned to it. At the top, in different handwriting than the medical notes, someone had scrawled an address. River Clinic, 14 miles south, Cypress Bend. How did you know that was there? Mara asked carefully. Eden's expression remained blank. I don't know. I just knew. Jonas moved away from the window. We need to decide what we're doing. The plantation's abandoned. We could leave. Head north. Start over somewhere. And go where? Etta asked. We're escaped slaves. They'll hunt us. They'll hunt us anyway if we stay. I'm not talking about staying. Etta gestured to the journals. I'm talking about finding this clinic. Getting real answers. Why? Jonas demanded. What difference does it make? We know what happened. Children were bred and experimented on. Eden and Ina survived. That's enough. It's not enough for them. Etta looked at the twins. Is it? Eden finally raised her head. Her red-tinted eyes caught the lantern light strangely. We need to know who made us. You know who made you, Jonas said. Some doctor named Harlow who... We need to know why, Ina interrupted. Her voice was stronger than before. Why we lived when others died. Why we don't remember things. Why people fear us. Why we don't dream, Eden added. Mara studied them. You think this clinic has those answers? Yes. Both twins spoke simultaneously. Jonas shook his head. You want to walk into the place where you were created? Where dozens of children died? That's insane. Maybe. Eden's face remained expressionless. But we're going anyway. The finality in her voice left no room for argument. These girls, who'd barely spoken for 12 years, had made a decision. They would seek their origins, no matter the risk. Mara looked around at the others. 3 other volunteers had joined them overnight. A field worker named Samuel, a kitchen woman named Ruth, and a young man called Thomas who knew the swamp routes. 7 people total. Small enough to move quickly. Large enough to protect each other. The clinic's 14 miles south, Mara said, through swamp country. It'll take 2 days if we move carefully. We don't have supplies for that, Jonas pointed out. We have this house. Etta stood. Silas left food, blankets, tools. We take what we need. That's stealing from the master. The master's gone, and he stole from us first. Jonas couldn't argue with that logic. Fine. But we leave at first light. Longer we stay here, more dangerous it gets. They spent the remaining hours preparing. Mara gathered medical supplies from Silas's cabinet. Etta collected blankets and dried food. Jonas and the other men found knives, rope, and lanterns. Eden and Ina sat with the journals, reading every page. Their faces showed nothing, but occasionally one would touch the other's hand. A brief connection that seemed to steady them both. By evening, everything was ready. The group gathered in the mansion's parlor, too nervous to return to the slave quarters, too practical to waste candles staying awake. They lay on expensive carpets, and furniture never meant for their bodies. Strange reversal. Enslaved people sleeping in the master's finest room. The twins settled together near the cold fireplace. They lay on their sides facing each other, hands clasped between them. Then they began to hum. It started so quietly Mara almost missed it. A low, droning sound from deep in their throats. Not quite a song, not quite a moan, something in between. The sound filled the room slowly, building in layers as one twin's hum harmonized with the others. The frequency was odd. It made Mara's teeth vibrate slightly, made her breathing want to match its rhythm. She felt herself relaxing against her will. The tension in her shoulders eased. Her thoughts slowed. Around her, the others were experiencing the same thing. Jonas's rigid posture softened. Etta's worried expression smoothed. Samuel's breathing deepened into sleep. The humming continued, steady and strange, soothing and deeply unsettling at the same time. Mara fought to stay awake, needing to understand what the twins were doing, but her eyelids grew heavy. The humming pulled her down like gentle hands pushing her underwater. Her last conscious thought was a question. Were the twins trying to comfort the group, or were they practicing something else entirely? The humming followed her into darkness. Dawn hadn't broken yet when Mara woke the group. The sky outside showed only the barest hint of gray, stars still visible through the mansion's tall windows. "Time to move," she said quietly. They gathered their supplies in silence. Food bags made from old flour sacks, blankets rolled tight and tied with rope, knives tucked into belts, 2 lanterns, but they'd use them sparingly. Light drew attention. Jonas checked each person's load, making sure weight was distributed fairly. "Stay together. No wandering. If I signal to stop, you freeze immediately." The twins stood by the door, already prepared. They carried nothing but a single journal Eden had insisted on bringing. Everything else they owned fit in their pockets, which was to say, they owned nothing at all. Mara watched them, 2 girls who'd spent their entire lives in captivity, about to step into unknown territory. Yet they showed no fear, no excitement, just that same blank watchfulness that unsettled everyone around them. "Ready?" Mara asked them. Both nodded once. The group filed out through the mansion's back entrance. The grounds spread before them in pre-dawn dimness, fields they'd worked for years, cabins they'd slept in, the burned remains of Silas's barn still smoking faintly. Then, beyond it all, the tree line. Freedom, danger, truth, all mixed together in the dark forest waiting ahead. Jonas led them across the final field. His feet knew every furrow, every stone. This land had been his prison. Now it was his escape route. At the forest's edge, he stopped, turned back, looked at the plantation one last time. "Anyone wants to stay, speak now," he said. No one spoke. "Then we leave it behind." They stepped into the trees. Day 1 unfolded in careful silence. Jonas moved ahead, checking paths, watching for patrols. Slave catchers worked these woods regularly. Overseers from neighboring plantations sometimes rode through looking for runaways. The group kept to game trails and creek beds, places where their footprints would wash away. Samuel, who'd hunted rabbits in these forests for years, pointed out landmarks. A lightning-struck pine, a boulder shaped like a sleeping bear, a clearing where wild blackberries grew. By midday, they'd covered 4 miles. Mara called a brief rest near a stream. Everyone drank, refilled canteens, checked their feet for blisters. The twins sat slightly apart from the others. They didn't drink, didn't eat, just sat watching the water flow past. Etta approached them cautiously. "You need to eat something. Long journey ahead." "Not hungry," Eden said. "When did you last eat?" The twins looked at each other. Neither answered. "Try," Etta insisted, offering dried apples. "Please." Ina took one piece, put it in her mouth, chewed mechanically, swallowed. Her face showed no pleasure, no distaste, just compliance. Eden did the same. It reminded Mara of feeding sick children who'd lost their will to live. That same empty obedience. She filed the observation away with all her other concerns about the twins. Afternoon brought harder terrain. The path narrowed, forcing them into single file. Thorns caught at clothing. Roots tried to trip unwary feet. Thomas, who knew swamp roots, took the lead for this section. He guided them around standing water, pointing out cottonmouths sunning on logs, warning about soft ground that would swallow a person whole. "Used to run these paths as a boy," he told Mara quietly, "before Dunwell bought me. Thought I knew freedom back then. Didn't know anything. You know it now? Ask me when we reach somewhere safe." Evening approached faster than expected. Jonas found a camping spot near a massive fallen oak, its trunk thick enough to shelter all 7 of them. They ate cold food. No fire, too risky. Shared water. Spread blankets in a rough circle. The twins settled at the oak's base. They sat close together, foreheads nearly touching, breathing in perfect rhythm. Then they began to hum. That same strange sound from the night before. Low, droning, almost vibrating. Mara felt it work on her again. Her anxiety about the journey ahead softened. Her worry about what they'd find at the clinic dimmed. Even her fear of capture seemed less immediate. Around the circle, others relaxed visibly. Ruth's tense shoulders dropped. Samuel's worried expression eased. Jonas frowned at the twins. "What are they doing?" "Calming us," Mara said. "Or themselves. Hard to tell. Doesn't feel natural." "Nothing about them feels natural. Doesn't mean they're trying to harm us." Jonas didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. The humming continued for perhaps 10 minutes, then faded gradually. The twins settled into sleep, still holding hands. The group followed soon after, exhausted from miles of careful walking. Mara woke sometime deep in the night. Something had disturbed her. A sound, a movement. She couldn't tell. She sat up carefully. Moonlight filtered through oak branches, casting strange shadows. Eden stood beside her. The girl's pale face looked ghostly in the dim light. Her red-tinted eyes reflected moonlight like an animal's. "You're awake," Eden whispered. "What's wrong?" "I dreamed." Mara's stomach tightened. The twins had said they never dreamed. About what? Water, dark water, and chains attached to walls, and voices talking about us like we weren't people. Like we were livestock. That might just be memory, from when you were very young. No, Eden's voice was certain. This was recent. Like I was there yesterday. Like I'm still there. She looked at her hands in the moonlight, turned them over, examining her palms. "Are we real?" she asked. "Or did they make us wrong?" Mara didn't have an answer. She reached out slowly and took Eden's hand. The girl's skin was cold, almost fevered in its chill. "You're real," Mara said firmly. "Whatever they did, whoever they were, you're still real. Still human. Still deserving of truth and freedom." Eden stared at their joined hands. "I don't know what we deserve. I don't know what we are. You're 2 girls who survived when others didn't. That's enough for now." Eden was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "When we find the clinic, will we wish we hadn't?" "I don't know." That's the first honest thing anyone said to us. She returned to her place beside Ina, settling back into that strange, synchronized breathing. Within moments, both twins appeared asleep. Mara stayed awake much longer, thinking about children raised as experiments, about survivors carrying trauma in their bones, about truth that might destroy the people seeking it. Day 2 began with morning fog so thick they could barely see 10 feet ahead. Jonas moved even more carefully, stopping often to listen for sounds of other travelers. Around midday, they reached a remote ferry crossing. An old black man operated it, ferrying cargo across a wide, slow-moving river for pennies. He studied their group with knowing eyes. "Runaways? Free travelers," Jonas said carefully. "Mm-hmm." The ferryman's gaze settled on the twins. His expression changed. "Lord have mercy. You know them?" Mara asked. "Don't know them specific, but I know what they are." He stepped closer to Eden and Ina, who watched him silently. "You're from the river program, aren't you? The Pale Children?" Both twins nodded. The ferryman's face filled with old sorrow. "I used to ferry supplies to that clinic. 20 years back, maybe more. Heard crying sometimes from the buildings. Saw cages with white children inside. Told myself it wasn't my business. Told myself I had my own troubles." He looked at the twins directly. "I'm sorry. Should have done something. Should have told someone." "Who would you have told?" Eden asked quietly. "Who would have stopped it?" The ferryman had no answer. "You know where the clinic is now?" Jonas asked. "Still there, far as I know. About 10 miles downriver. Can't miss it. Only building standing in Cypress Bend." He ferried them across free of charge. Said it was the least he could do. On the far bank, before they disappeared into the trees, he called out, "Whatever you find there, I hope it brings you peace." The twins didn't respond. That evening, rain began falling, cold and steady. The group sheltered under a rock overhang, huddled together for warmth. Ina sat slightly apart from the others. Mara noticed her trembling. "Cold?" Mara offered a blanket. "No." Ina's voice was barely audible. "Scared." It was the first time either twin had admitted fear. "Of what?" Mara asked gently. "The truth." Ina pulled her knees to her chest. "What if we find out we were supposed to be something terrible? What if they made us to hurt people? You haven't hurt anyone. The plantation fell apart when we arrived. That wasn't your fault. That was Silas's guilt eating him alive." "Was it?" Ina looked at Mara with those unsettling eyes. "Or did we do something without knowing? What if we're weapons and don't realize it?" Mara had wondered the same thing, but she wouldn't confirm the girl's fears. "Whatever you are," she said carefully, "you get to choose what you become. The past doesn't own you, doesn't it?" Ina touched her pale arm. "This body was chosen for us. This face was designed. These eyes were planned. How do we choose anything when we were created on purpose?" Mara had no answer. She simply sat beside Ina in silence, sharing warmth, until the girl's trembling eased. Day 3 brought them close to their destination. By evening, they saw smoke rising in the distance, thin columns suggesting homesteads or farms near the river. Jonas called a halt in a dense pine grove. "We camp here tonight. Approach the clinic in daylight when we can see what we're walking into." They made a cold camp again, eating quietly, speaking in whispers. The twins sat together, but didn't hum tonight. They simply stared toward the smoke, toward whatever truth waited for them in Cypress Bend. Morning came gray and cold. Nobody had slept well. The twins sat together in pre-dawn darkness, silent and still as statues. Jonas roused the group quietly. "We move now, slow and careful. Thomas, you stay in the rear. Watch for anyone following." They gathered their meager belongings and moved through the pine grove toward the river. The terrain changed as they descended. Harder ground gave way to soft earth. Cypress trees rose like sentinels, their roots twisting through muddy water. Morning mist clung to everything, making the world feel ghostly and unreal. Mara stayed close to the twins. Both girls moved with mechanical precision, placing each foot exactly where the other had stepped. Their synchronized movement was so perfect it made her skin crawl. "Do you remember this place?" she asked quietly. "No," Eden said. "Yes," Ina said at the same time. The twins looked at each other. Some wordless communication passed between them. "Parts," Eden clarified. "The smell, the sound of water, the way light looks through cypress branches. But not whole memories," Ina added. "Just pieces." They continued in silence. The river appeared through the trees, wide, muddy, moving slow like something ancient and tired. The far bank was barely visible through morning fog. Jonas raised a hand. The group stopped. Ahead, through gaps in the vegetation, stood the ruins of a building. It was larger than Mara expected. 2 stories once, now mostly collapsed. Blackened timbers jutted toward the sky like broken bones. What remained of the walls showed signs of deliberate burning. Smoke stains above empty window frames, charred wood around doorways. "That's it," Jonas said quietly. "Has to be." They approached slowly, weapons ready. Thomas had a knife. Jonas carried a thick branch. The women stayed between the men, the twins in the center. Nobody spoke. The building's front entrance was gone entirely, just an open mouth leading into darkness. Glass crunched under their feet. Mara looked down and saw shattered jars, broken bottles, remnants of medical equipment scattered across burnt floorboards. Inside was worse. The ceiling had partially caved in, letting morning light illuminate a nightmare. Along one wall, chains, dozens of them. Small chains with cuffs sized for infant wrists. They hung from iron rings bolted into stone that had survived the fire. Mara felt her stomach turn. She'd delivered babies for 20 years, knew exactly how small a newborn's wrist was. These chains would have fit. Eden walked toward them like someone in a trance. She touched one set of cuffs. They swung gently, making a soft metallic sound. "We were here," she whispered. Ruth covered her mouth, turning away. Samuel muttered a prayer under his breath. Jonas moved deeper into the ruins. "Over here!" A fallen cabinet had spilled its contents across the floor. Jars, some cracked, some intact, lay among broken wood. The labels were still partially readable. Subject 7, liver sample, 1842. Subject 12, tissue preservation, 1843. Subject 19, failed development study, 1845. Each label described children as experimental material, things to be studied, preserved, catalogued. Mara counted 19 different subject numbers. 19 children reduced to anatomical specimens. Etta knelt beside a rusted metal tray. Medical instruments lay scattered across it. Scalpels, forceps, needles thick enough to pierce infant skin. She picked up one tool, examined it, then threw it against the wall with sudden violence. "They cut them open," she said, voice shaking, "while they were alive. These tools, they're for surgery on living subjects." Thomas found the ledgers. 3 massive books, water-damaged but readable, stacked in what had once been a locked cabinet. The fire had warped the metal, but hadn't consumed the pages inside. He opened the first one. His expression went dark. "What is it?" Jonas asked. "Birth records." Thomas's voice was flat. "Names of mothers, fathers when known, physical descriptions of infants, all pale, all light-eyed, and," he paused, reading ahead, "ages at death. None made it past 10 years. Mara looked at Eden and Ina. Both girls stood motionless, their faces unreadable. "Except them," Thomas continued. "Last 2 entries, Subject 27 and Subject 28. Born 1848. Listed as survived to transport. No death date recorded. 10 years ago. The twins would have been 10 when they left this place." Eden moved to the ledger, stared at the entries Thomas indicated. Her fingers traced the words written in careful script. Female twins. Remarkable synchronization. High value potential. "They sold us," she said quietly. "We survived their experiments, so they sold us." Ina joined her sister. Together they read the clinical descriptions of their own births, their early development, their value as property. The entries were detailed, disturbingly so. Feeding schedules, weight measurements, behavioral observations, sleep patterns, reactions to isolation, responses to pain. Everything documented like they were livestock. Mara watched grief and rage war across both girls' faces, but neither cried, neither screamed. They simply absorbed the truth with the same quiet intensity they brought to everything. "Keep looking," Jonas said. "We need to understand the whole picture." They spread through the ruins. Each discovery added to the horror. Ruth found a half-burnt medical journal describing breeding protocols for producing albino offspring. The language was cold, scientific, describing human beings as experimental variables. Samuel discovered children's clothing, tiny shirts and pants, all roughly sewn, all identical. He counted 15 sets, held one up to the light. It would fit a 5-year-old, maybe younger. Thomas uncovered sketches, anatomical drawings of pale children at various ages, development charts, growth projections. The artist had been skilled. The children's faces were rendered with disturbing precision. Eden found the sketch that changed everything. It was tucked inside the back cover of the third ledger, protected from water damage. A single page showing 2 identical infants lying side by side. Their eyes were closed. Their small hands reached toward each other. In the corner, written in the same hand as the ledger entries, subjects 27 and 28, day of birth, remarkable similarity, Dr. A.H. Eden's hands shook, holding it. Ina moved beside her, looking over her shoulder. "That's us," Ina whispered. They stared at their own infant faces rendered in careful pencil strokes, evidence that they'd existed here, that they'd survived when others hadn't. The group gathered around the twins. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Mara felt conflicting emotions crash through her. Horror at what had been done. Grief for the children who hadn't survived. Rage at the people who'd created this nightmare. And strange relief, because now they knew. The truth was terrible, but it was truth. "We should go," Jonas said finally. "We've seen enough." They moved toward the entrance. The twins went last, both girls taking final looks at the place they'd been born. Then they heard it. Footsteps. Multiple people moving through undergrowth. Voices calling to each other. The heavy sound of wagon wheels on soft ground. Jonas gestured frantically. The group scattered, hiding behind collapsed walls, ducking behind fallen timber. Mara pulled the twins down beside her behind what remained of a stone fireplace. Through gaps in the ruined wall, they watched. 6 men emerged from the tree line. They wore rough work clothes and carried rifles. They moved with military precision, forming a perimeter around the ruins. Behind them, a wagon approached. The driver pulled the horses to a stop, climbed down, opened the wagon's rear door. A figure stepped out, tall, thin, wearing a long coat, despite the warming day. He moved with the careful precision of someone who'd spent years controlling every gesture. His hair was silver white. His face was deeply lined, but his eyes were sharp, calculating, missing nothing as they surveyed the ruins. He walked toward the building's entrance, boots crunching on broken glass. One of the armed men approached him. "The tracks are fresh, Doctor. Multiple people. Maybe an hour ahead of us." "Good." The man's voice was cultured, precise. "They'll return. They always return to their origins. It's instinct, Doctor." Beside Mara, both twins went rigid. The man stepped through the entrance into the ruins, stood in the center of the destroyed clinic, turning slowly, examining everything with professional interest. 10 years, he said to no one in particular. 10 years since the fire. And still, the bones remain. Still, the truth persists. He picked up one of the small chains, let it dangle from his fingers. "Subjects, 27 and 28, he called out, his voice carrying through the ruins. I know you're here. I know you've come home. He turned in a slow circle, those sharp eyes scanning shadows. My name is Dr. Aldrich Harlow, he said. And I created you, Doctor. Aldrich Harlow stood perfectly still in the center of the ruins, one hand holding the small chain, the other resting casually in his coat pocket. His voice carried the practiced patience of someone who'd spent decades in total control. Subjects 27 and 28, he repeated. You've traveled far to understand your origins. Allow me to provide that understanding. Silence answered him. His men moved through the debris with systematic efficiency. They checked behind walls, overturned fallen timber, examined every shadow large enough to hide a person. Mara pressed herself against the stone fireplace, holding her breath. Beside her, both twins had gone completely rigid. Their eyes tracked Harlow's every movement with an intensity she'd never seen before. One of the armed men approached their hiding spot. Boots crunched on broken glass. He was 3 steps away. 2 steps. His rifle swept the area methodically. Over here, another guard called from the opposite side of the building. Fresh footprints, multiple people. The man near them turned away, moving toward the voice. Harlow walked slowly through the ruins, speaking as if conducting a lecture. This building represented years of careful research, controlled breeding, scientific observation. The goal was simple: create subjects with natural influence over others, pale children whose very presence would affect those around them. He stopped beside the fallen cabinet where the preserved jars had spilled, picked one up, examined the label. 19 subjects before you, he continued. All failures, physical defect, developmental problems. None survived long enough to demonstrate useful traits. He set the jar down carefully. But you two, you were different. You synchronized perfectly from birth, developed the calming influence I'd theorized, demonstrated remarkable resilience. His men continued their search. They were getting closer to Ruth's hiding spot behind collapsed rafters. Samuel pressed himself into a corner, trying to disappear into shadows. I burned this place myself, Harlow said conversationally. 10 years ago. The authorities were asking questions. Neighbors reported unusual sounds. It became necessary to eliminate evidence and relocate. He walked toward the chains hanging from the wall, touched them almost affectionately. But I always hoped you survived. Hoped someone had transported you before the fire. Hoped your unique genetics would persist. He turned, those sharp eyes scanning shadows. And here you are, returned home like salmon to spawning grounds. Instinct is a powerful force. A guard moved past Mara's position. His boot was inches from Eden's leg. The twin didn't move, didn't breathe. Her sister beside her matched the stillness perfectly. The guard paused, turned slightly, started to look down. Sir, another man called from outside. We've got movement in the trees. Jonas, it had to be, drawing their attention away. Every guard rushed toward the entrance. Harlow followed calmly, unhurried. Alive, he instructed. I want them all alive. The moment they cleared the doorway, Mara grabbed both twins' arms. Now, run! They bolted from hiding, racing toward a collapsed section of the back wall. Thomas emerged from his spot, helping Ruth through debris. Samuel grabbed Etta's hand, pulling her forward. They almost made it. The guards returned faster than expected, rifles leveled. Harsh voices shouting commands. Don't move! Hands where we can see them! The group froze, slowly raised their hands. Harlow walked back inside, saw them standing there. A small smile crossed his face. Subjects, 27 and 28, he said softly. Still together, still protecting each other. His eyes moved across the others. And you've brought companions? How touching! The guards separated them efficiently. Hands were bound. The men were pushed toward the wagon. The women were held at gunpoint near the entrance. Harlow approached the twins directly. studied their faces with clinical interest. "Remarkable," he murmured. 10 years older, fully developed, and still possessing that unusual quality. He leaned closer. "Do you remember me?" Eden stared at him without blinking. "No. Truthful. Good. I conditioned you against retaining early memories. A necessary precaution." He circled them slowly. "But your bodies remember. Your instincts remember. That synchronization you share. I created that. Trained it into you before you could walk." Ina's hands trembled. Eden's breathing stayed steady. Harlow noticed. Even now, one panics, the other stabilizes. Automatic, instinctive. "My most successful pair." He gestured to his men. "Secure them in the storage room, the others in separate cells. I want constant observation." They were dragged toward a reinforced structure behind the main ruins, something that had survived the fire intact. A stone building with a heavy wooden door and no windows. Inside, the walls were lined with iron rings. Fresh chains had been installed recently. This wasn't abandoned. This was prepared. Harlow had been waiting for them. The guards chained Eden and Ina to opposite walls, just far enough apart that they couldn't touch. The twins' eyes locked on each other immediately. "Don't bother struggling," Harlow said from the doorway. "These restraints were designed specifically for you. I've had 10 years to refine the specifications." Eden tried her breathing technique, that slow, steady rhythm that usually calmed people, made them uncertain, made them question themselves. Harlow watched with academic interest. "Yes, try it. Let's see how developed the skill has become." Nothing happened. He smiled. "I trained myself to resist your influence years ago, subjected myself to your conditioning repeatedly during your infancy, built up immunity through exposure." He tapped his temple. "Your calming effect requires susceptibility. I have none." Ina pulled against her chains. They held firm. "Your bond is useful," Harlow continued, "but controllable. Your tools, valuable tools. And I intend to use you to restart what I began here." He stepped back. "Your bloodlines will create a new generation, more refined, more controlled, more profitable." His expression hardened. "You'll cooperate because you have no choice, because I understand your psychology better than you understand it yourselves, because I created that psychology." The door slammed shut. Heavy locks engaged. Darkness filled the room except for thin light from cracks in the walls. In separate cells nearby, the others were being secured. Mara heard Jonas protest, heard a guard strike him, heard Thomas shout warnings that were cut off by threats. Through the wall cracks, whispers began traveling. "Mara!" Ruth's voice, frightened but controlled. "I'm here." Mara pressed against the stone. "Everyone stay calm. Don't provoke them." "They're gonna kill us." Samuel's voice shook. "No." Mara kept her tone firm. "We don't die here. You hear me? We survive this." In the holding room, Eden and Ina sat chained in darkness. Their eyes had adjusted. They could see each other across the space, close but untouchable. Eden's breathing was unsteady, fear breaking through her usual control. Ina noticed, started breathing deliberately, slowly, in and out. A steady rhythm. Eden heard it, matched it. Her panic eased slightly. Ina continued. 4 counts in, hold. 4 counts out, hold. Repeat. Eden synchronized perfectly. Their chests rose and fell together, despite the distance between them. The rhythm steadied, deepened, became something more than just breathing. Night fell completely. The ruins disappeared into darkness. Guards changed shifts outside. And in the locked room, the twins breathed together. Steady, constant, waiting. Dawn broke gray and cold. Light filtered through cracks in the stone walls, like pale fingers reaching down into darkness. The basement of the clinic was still mostly shadow. Damp air clung to everything. Water dripped somewhere in the distance with steady rhythm. Two guards stood outside the holding room where the twins were chained. They'd been on duty since midnight. Tired, bored, ready for shift change. Inside separate cells along the hallway, the others waited. Mara pressed against her wall, listening. Jonas flexed his wrists against the rope bindings for the 100th time. Etta sat perfectly still, conserving energy. Samuel tried not to panic. Ruth whispered prayers under her breath. Thomas studied the patterns of guard movement through his door's narrow gap. The twins had been breathing together all night. 4 counts in. Hold. 4 counts out. Hold. Repeat. Over and over. Their chests rose and fell in perfect synchronization despite the chains holding them apart. And now, as dawn arrived, they began to hum. It started so quietly, the guards didn't notice at first. Just a low sound, barely audible. 2 voices blending into one sustained note. Eden's voice carried the lower tone. Ina's voice lifted slightly higher. Together they created something that felt less like music and more like vibration, like the hum of distant thunder or water moving deep underground. One guard shifted his weight, frowned slightly. The other guard glanced at him. "What? You hear that?" "Hear what?" The humming continued, still quiet, still steady. The rhythm matched their breathing perfectly. The first guard rubbed his face. "Nothing. Just tired. Shift change soon." The second guard leaned against the wall. Inside the room, the twins never stopped. Their eyes stayed locked on each other across the darkness. Their mouths barely moved. The sound seemed to come from somewhere deeper than their throats. Minutes passed. The humming never changed pitch or volume, just constant, unchanging, present. The first guard paced. 3 steps, one direction. 3 steps back. His jaw tightened. "Would you stand still?" The second guard snapped. "I am standing still. You're pacing like a caged dog." "So?" The first guard's voice carried an edge now. "What's it matter to you?" The second guard straightened. "It don't matter. Just annoying. Everything's annoying to you." The first guard stopped pacing, faced his companion directly. "You been complaining since we started this shift. I ain't complained once. You complained about the cold, about the food, about the smell down here." The humming continued behind the door, steady, persistent, unchanging. The second guard's expression hardened. "I said the food was bad. That ain't complaining. That's stating fact. You're stating opinions like they're facts. That's all you ever do. Better than pacing back and forth like something's wrong with you." The first guard stepped closer. "Something wrong with me? You're the one can't do a simple guard shift without running your mouth." Their voices rose, not shouting yet, but getting there. In his cell, Jonas heard the argument growing louder. He'd been working at the nail he'd found during the night. A long, rusty piece of metal that had been wedged between floor stones. His fingers were raw from prying it loose, but he had it now. He twisted it against the rope around his wrists. The sharp edge caught fiber, started cutting through. The guards' voices got louder. "You calling me incompetent?" "I'm calling you annoying. There's a difference. Maybe you should say that again." "I'll say it as many times as—" A scuffle erupted. Boot against boot, shoving. One guard pushed the other against the wall hard enough to make stone scrape. Jonas felt the rope give. One hand came free, then the other. He stayed perfectly still, listening. The guards were fully focused on each other now, grappling, cursing. The kind of fight that came from exhaustion and tension finding an outlet. Jonas moved fast, slipped to his cell door. The lock was simple, a wooden bar on the outside. He reached through the gap, fingers searching, found the bar, lifted it carefully. The door swung open silent on old hinges. He crept down the hallway, passed the fighting guards without them noticing, reached Mara's cell, lifted her bar. She emerged instantly, no questions. They moved together to Etta's door. Within 2 minutes, Everyone except the twins was free. The guards were still fighting. One had the other in a chokehold. Neither noticed the escaped prisoners gathering weapons from the guards' abandoned post at the hallway entrance. Metal rods leaning against walls. Broken shelf pieces with sharp edges. Tools left behind from recent repairs. A hammer, a crowbar, a length of chain. Thomas hefted the crowbar, tested its weight. Jonas took the chain, wrapped one end around his fist. Mara grabbed 2 metal rods, handed one to Ruth. The guards finally separated, breathing hard. One wiped blood from his lip. They both turned toward the twins' door again and saw the hallway empty, every cell door open. "Oh, hell!" Jonas hit him from behind with the chain. Fast, brutal. The guard went down hard. The second guard reached for his knife. Thomas swung the crowbar, connected with the man's wrist. The knife clattered away. Samuel grabbed it before it stopped sliding. They worked together without speaking. Rope from the cells became bindings. The guards were secured, gagged, dragged into empty rooms. 2 minutes. No noise. No alerts. Jonas moved to the twins' door. Heavy locks. Reinforced. He studied them briefly, then used the crowbar as leverage. Metal screeched. The first lock broke. Then the second. The door swung open. Inside, Eden and Ina sat chained to opposite walls. They'd stopped humming the moment the fight began. Now they stared at the group with complete calm. Jonas approached Eden first, used the hammer to break the chain link, then moved to Ina. The twins stood slowly, stretched cramped muscles, looked at each other across the room they'd been separated in. Then they walked toward each other, met in the center, gripped hands. Mara stepped forward. "You both all right?" Eden nodded once. Her voice was steady. "No one else leaves here hurt." Ina squeezed her sister's hand, repeated the words exactly. "No one else leaves here hurt." The group moved into the hallway together. 7 people, armed with whatever they could carry, standing in the dim light of early dawn. Above them, footsteps suddenly thundered. Voices shouted. Harlow's distinctive tone cut through the noise. "Get down there! Check the prisoners! Now!" Heavy boots on stairs. Multiple men rushing downward. Harlow's voice again, closer, furious. "If they've escaped, I want them found immediately. Do not harm the twins. Everyone else is expendable." The group pressed against the walls, weapons ready, breathing steady. Jonas met Mara's eyes. She nodded. The twins stood at the center, still holding hands, their breathing synchronized again. 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. The first guard burst into view, saw the empty cells, turned toward the group. Thomas swung the crowbar. The guard's knees buckled. Jonas followed with the chain, moving in perfect silence. 2 more guards reached the bottom of the stairs, saw what was happening, tried to retreat. Samuel and Ruth cut them off. The metal rods sang through air, connected with flesh and bone. No mercy, no hesitation. These men had kept them caged, had watched without helping, had followed Harlow's orders without question. The guards went down one by one, not killed, but disabled, bound, silenced. The twins never moved from the center of the hallway. Their synchronized breathing continued, steady, anchoring, creating a rhythm the others could feel even in the chaos. More footsteps above. Harlow's voice screaming orders that made no sense anymore, his authority crumbling like wet paper. The group moved fast, climbed the stairs together, burst into the main floor of the clinic. Morning light poured through broken windows. The building looked different in daylight, smaller, more pathetic. Rotting wood, mold-stained walls, equipment covered in rust and dust. Harlow stood at the far end of the main room. Behind him was a doorway leading to what looked like a preserved chamber. Clean equipment visible inside, organized shelves. This was the space he'd protected, his sanctuary. "Stop!" His voice cracked with desperation. "You don't understand what you're doing!" Jonas moved forward. The others fanned out behind him, blocking exits, surrounding Harlow's position. "We understand perfectly." Mara's voice cut like a blade. "You made children into experiments. You treated lives like property. You deserve worse than anything we'll give you." Harlow's eyes locked on the twins. "Eden, Ina, listen to me. I gave you life. I designed your minds, your abilities. Everything you are came from my work." Eden and Ina walked forward together, still holding hands, still breathing in perfect sync. Harlow backed toward the doorway. "You're exceptional because of me. You survived when all the others failed. That makes you valuable. That makes you nothing." Eden's voice was quiet, absolute. "We are nothing because of you." Ina finished the thought without pause. "We are everything despite you." They kept walking, slow, deliberate, each step perfectly timed with the other. Harlow retreated into his medical chamber. His hands fumbled behind him, searching. "I can teach you. I can help you understand your potential. We can—" He triggered something. A metal cage dropped from the ceiling, designed to trap whatever stood in the chamber's center. The twins were faster. They split apart. Eden left, Ina right, moving with the same instinctive coordination they'd always shared. The cage slammed down between them, catching nothing but empty floor. Harlow stared at the failed trap. His face went white. Jonas charged, grabbed Harlow by the collar before the doctor could run, slammed him against the wall hard enough to knock breath from lungs. "Please," Harlow gasped. "Please, I can make you wealthy. I have connections, resources. Just let me—" "Burn it." Eden's voice came from the doorway. She stood with Ina, both staring at the room full of preserved equipment. "Burn everything." Mara found lamp oil in a storage cupboard. Thomas smashed glass containers. Etta gathered papers, ledgers, diagrams, journals, and piled them in the center of the room. Samuel located the cages, small ones, built for children. He dragged them out and stacked them beside the paper pile. Ruth collected the medical instruments, scalpels, restraints, needles, tools designed to hurt and measure and control. She threw them onto the growing mound. Harlow struggled in Jonas's grip. "No, no, you can't. That's decades of research, irreplaceable knowledge. You don't understand what you're destroying." Eden stepped closer, looked directly into his eyes. "We understand perfectly." Ina mirrored her position on the other side. "We understand better than you ever could." They began humming, that same low tone, that same vibration that felt like it came from somewhere deeper than human throats. Harlow's eyes widened. He tried to look away. Couldn't. The twins held his gaze without blinking. Their humming filled the chamber, filled his head, made thinking difficult. His breathing quickened, matched theirs without meaning to. 4 counts in, hold. 4 counts out, hold. Jonas felt it too. The rhythm, the pull. But he'd learned to recognize it now, to let it steady him instead of control him. He kept his grip firm on Harlow's collar. Mara poured oil across the pile, across the floor, across the examination table where the twins had likely been measured and studied as infants. The twins stepped in unison, closer to Harlow. Their humming never wavered. Harlow tried to speak. His mouth moved. No words came, just gasping attempts at sound. Eden stopped humming. "You made us to be silent, to be controlled, to exist only as you designed." Ina stopped humming. "You failed." They stepped back together. Jonas dragged Harlow forward, positioned him where he could see everything. "You're going to watch." Mara struck the match, held it up. Let Harlow see the small flame that would consume his life's work. "Please!" The word finally escaped Harlow's throat. Broken. Desperate. "Please don't." She dropped it, Fire caught instantly, spread across oil-soaked paper, climbed the pile of cages, consumed ledgers and diagrams and journals. Heat bloomed fast and hungry. Harlow screamed, not from pain, from watching, from seeing decades of carefully preserved work transform to ash and smoke in seconds. The group moved toward the exit. Jonas dragged Harlow along. The doctor fought, thrashed, tried to break free and run toward the flames. Let it burn. Jonas's voice was iron. Let it all burn. They burst outside. Morning sun bright after the smoky interior. Fresh air shocking after breathing ash. Behind them, flames consumed the clinic. Windows shattered from heat. Roof timbers cracked and collapsed. Smoke rose in thick columns toward the clean sky. Harlow collapsed to his knees, staring at the destruction. Tears streaming. Mouth moving in silent denials. The twins stood side by side, watching. Their faces showed nothing. No satisfaction, no grief. Just quiet observation of something ending that should have ended long ago. Leave him. Eden spoke without looking away from the fire. Let him live with nothing. Ina's voice carried the same flat tone. They turned together, walked toward the riverbank where a small boat was tied. The others followed. I hope you found that story powerful. Leave a like on the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. I have handpicked 2 stories for you that are even more powerful. Have a great day.